Treasure in the Snow by Lil, Chapter 3. Whatever it was that made the young girl ask her question, it must have been the same thing that caused her to remain sad and huddled upon the floor only a few short minutes. She knew nothing of the place, except that outside was horrid, and the woman in the library, who owned it, and presumably herself as well, was also horrid. A meeker creature might have stayed to wait for the fearsome woman, afraid even more of the unknown, but Cherie was up and walking before she'd even finished her tears. She walked back up the long hallway, opening the oaken doors as she went. The first held some strange objects in all sorts of shapes and sizes. She recognized none of them, so walked to the next. Within were many seats, all facing a stage with enormous red curtains. Cherie entered the third room. In it were canvases and paints, colored graphite and chalks, and stacks of blank paper. Places where paint had splattered were all over the gray walls and floor, but the ceiling was again painted, this time a forest scene full of deer, badgers, squirrels, rabbits, bears, wild cats, birds of all sorts, and other animals she couldn't name. Cherie loved to draw with charcoal from the fireplace at home, so she picked up a pink graphite rod and began to form her mother's face. She made red lips and the hair brown, and then she pouted because there was no hazel like her mother's eyes. She decided to use brown in the middle of each eye and green on the outer edge. She was quite pleased with herself for having figured it out. Then the door opened and the Lady Celine glanced in. Seeing Cherie, she said, "I knew you couldn't have gotten far. What are you doing?" "It is my mother, who loves me and calls me dearest and never has ever hit me." "It looks more like a misshapen radish with eyes, child." "But beautiful eyes!" Lady Celine walked briskly across the room and took up the brown and green graphite, blending the colors around a black pupil. She used 12 colors in only a matter of minutes to create a pair of eyes that looked like someone was looking through a hole in the canvas at them. "Oh, they're so real!" Cherie cried delightedly. "That is the point. What you call beautiful, you call so out of ignorance, not truth. Now you see how ugly your attempt is, yes?" Cherie sighed, as her mother would when teaching a tough lesson. "My eyes were made from my heart. They are still beautiful, so there." Celine grimaced, and she set down the last graphite rod. She fluidly bent down so that her face was level with Cherie's and said tightly, "You are not to correct me, child. Ever. You have been doing so ever since you arrived, and you will stop or there will be ramifications." Cherie was wise enough not to respond. "Come," Lady Celine said as she straightened and turned for the door. Cherie followed, glaring. "This is the A-Wing. Art is its theme and purpose. You've seen enough of it, though. It is high time you saw the N-Wing, child." The Mistress of Shadows seemed intent on calling Cherie child instead of her name. Why would she say that her name could stay if she had no intention of using it? And especially when her name was so lovely. "What is the N-Wing?" "The Necessities." "What are necessities?" "Necessities. They are the needed things, required things. The dorms of the servants are there, where you will sleep. The kitchen is there, as is the storage, for the most part. The dining hall, relieving rooms, and baths are there as well. You will work in the N-Wing under the supervision of Alga. You will do well, or you will suffer." Cherie had no clue what the word ramifications meant, but she was sure it must mean suffering, too. She didn't mind work. She knew how to set the table and run mugs of water or soup out to her father in the fields, and water the garden, all without spilling. She could wipe things off and rinse dishes after her mother washed them. Besides, Alga, who she knew nothing of, was someone other than the Lady Celine, which meant meeting her should be a good thing. "This is Mordred Castle, and you are now a servant here. You will do as you are told by anyone older than you, which would be everyone." "How do you know how old I am?" "You are younger than all others here, that is enough." "I am this many," said the little girl, holding up 6 outstretched fingers on her hands. "I warned you," Celine firmly replied. As they returned to the main entrance, they met 2 old women who were leaving the west archway. One was hunched over a cane and had a pinched face like a prune. Cherie had eaten once before. The other had softer features, yet also plenty of wrinkles, and had hair as white as the snow outside. They were carrying a wicker basket of white laundry between them, and they were arguing. "Alga, I will tell you who was king. Dirtmas, that's who," said the prune-faced one. No, Berta, Al Wexmas was king, and who cares? We're talking about the ages of wines, not politics," shouted the other, her face getting quite red and her voice cracking and wheezing. "Al Wexmas! Why, he was only a babe then! The wine is much older than he is, and what of politics? He was the better king." "Better? Dirtimus made the aqueducts. Our country would be lost without that water. Water makes for good harvests of vines." Water? Alwexus run the turning age war. Who cares about farming compared? The vines grow well when not trampled underfoot by armies, ended Berta as the two women saw they were not alone and came to a puffing, sputtering halt. Well, well, chatting again, are we? The Mistress of Shadows snorted sarcastically. If you are quite winded enough, meet this child. She will need to be cared for and taught proper etiquette, and see to it that she gets nothing to eat today. She will not correct me. After stating that, she turned to the north arch and left all of them there, relieved she was gone. Nothing, groaned Cherie, her stomach growling in protest. What she says is, dearie, Alga said through her few teeth. What's a sweet little thing like you doing here, I wonder? Berta spoke softly, with her beady, squinted eyes glistening. I am Cherie. It means beloved or dearest. I'm here because Celine kept me from dying, but I would love to go home now, please. No, Cherie, dearie, Alga sighed. You will never, ever be returning to wherever you came from. You are to live at the Mordred now, for good. But Berta dropped her end of the basket, almost dragging Alga to the floor. Alga dropped her end to try and swat the other old woman, but Berta swung her cane in mock defense. They scowled playfully and then took Cherie's two hands while she giggled. Don't worry, dearie, we'll get you fixed right up. Oh, yes, we will, but no food, mind ye, or you'll feel my cane across your back. Don't frighten the poor girl, Berta. I am just being clear, Alga. You're being wretched as old Fenry. Fenry wasn't wretched, he was fetching. You're thinking of Daxon. I says what I mean, and I mean it was old Fenry. Well, I say you're senile. It was Daxon. Berta, if you say Daxon one more time. Oh, willing to take a licking in front of a child, are ye? And then they opened the door, as the giggling Cherie hadn't even realized they had walked to it, and within were stands and fabrics, as well as needles and threads of all shapes, sizes, and color. There was a window high on the great wall, with the sun and a moon on it. The sun covered the white side of the window, and the moon the black side. Cherie had never seen anything like it in the tiny village she'd grown up in. Everyone there had lived in hovels. She'll need clothes, and we both know who should make 'em, shouted Berta, as she went inside and slammed the door. Go prick yourself on a needle. I'll do what she really needs and give her a bath. Alga screamed at the door before fanning herself with her right hand and squeezing Cherie's hand in her left. Her face was bright red now, and she was breathing so heavily her whole body creaked each pant. Do you hate each other, Miss Alga? Heavens, no, child. We don't hate each other. As if I could hate me own sister. What imagination children have. Cherie didn't know what imagination was, but suspected it was to be ashamed of in Alga's mind. How was she supposed to know they were sisters? She only had an elder brother, who she knew very little because he was always in the fields with their father. Alga walked back out of the East Hall and toward the basket she and her sister had dropped. No sense leaving this here. Eh? She said as she took one handle and motioned Cherie to take the other. They picked it up with a stagger and dragged it down the west hall, where the women had come from. Alga opened the first door, which held a kitchen, and they slid it just inside. The mistress don't like a mess. We'll take it later. Berta's may sew the finest, but she can't cook worth beans. You want food? You come to me. After today, of course. Now, come on to the baths.